The night I crossed the line, the world didn't scream. It whispered. Everything around me felt too still, like the universe was waiting to see whether I'd flinch or finally finish what I'd started years ago, when I first decided that surviving wasn't the same as living. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. The city outside my window was breathing slowly, a low hum of distant traffic and neon lights bleeding against the dark sky. And inside my chest, something that had been shaking for years finally went quiet. That's how I knew this time was different. This wasn't rebellion. This was reclamation. It started with the file. One black USB drive, no bigger than my thumb, holding the kind of secrets that didn't get whispered, they got buried. Julia had slid it across the diner table 3 nights ago, the way some people slide a drink or a promise, and she didn't smile when she did it. "Once you open this," she'd said, voice low, eyes steady, "you can't close it again. They'll come for you, Lucy. Not in the movies kind of way. The quiet kind. The real kind." I'd wrapped my fingers around it anyway because when you've spent too long letting other people write your story, even danger starts to look like freedom. The name on the files wasn't new. Malik had been a shadow over my family for years, his name drifting through late-night arguments and coded whispers, showing up in places it didn't belong. He owned half the city's silence: developers, politicians, foundations, charity boards. But what Julia handed me wasn't rumor. It was proof. Wire transfers, offshore accounts, contracts with signatures I recognized. My father's. My sister Amanda's name buried in medical invoices that didn't belong to her. All of it traced back to him. And if I cracked it open, I wouldn't just be exposing Malik. I'd be dragging every rotten root up into the light. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. I sat with the USB like it was a loaded gun, because that's what it was. Every hour that passed, I thought of the last time I saw Malik in person. The fundraiser on the 14th floor. Glass walls. Violins. My father standing 2 steps behind him like a man who'd already sold his soul and signed the receipt. Malik had shaken my hand and said my name like it was already his property. "Lucy," he'd said with that smooth, polished smile. "You're your father's greatest investment." I had smiled back then because that's what we were trained to do. Tonight, I wasn't smiling. Julia's voice echoed in my head. "Don't give him time to smell the threat. Move first. That's the only way you survive a man like him." So I moved. I booked the motel under a name that didn't exist, the kind of place where no one looked too long at anyone, and I plugged the USB in. The screen lit up, a black terminal window swallowing the blue of my reflection, and line after line of numbers poured out. I wasn't supposed to understand it all, but I understood enough. Malik's empire wasn't just built on bribes. It was built on people. People like my family. People like me. The first transfer I clicked open was the house. My house. The one I'd thought my father built from years of careful work and ambition. But the paper trail told a different story. One where the deed was bought with money that wasn't his, and the house was just another asset in Malik's little kingdom. Another chain. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. The second file was worse. Amanda's medical debts, wiped clean years ago when she got sick. I'd always believed my father had found a way, pulled strings, made sacrifices. He hadn't. Malik had paid it off, and my family had spent years paying it back in silence. Somewhere around 2 a.m., my hands stopped shaking. I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of Malik, not of my father, not even of the storm I was about to start. Because it had already started years ago. I was just finally deciding to meet it on my feet instead of on my knees. The plan wasn't complicated. Julia would push the files to 3 encrypted networks, including one tied to a journalist too stubborn to die and too reckless to back off. Once it was out, it couldn't be pulled back. Malik would have to fight in daylight. And daylight was the one thing men like him couldn't buy. But it meant burning everything else with it. My father's reputation. The house. The quiet illusion we'd lived in for years. Amanda's trust. All of it. At 3:17 a.m., I pressed send. The world didn't explode. The motel didn't light up with sirens. It was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet you get right before a storm finally decides to land. By morning, the first ripple came. A message from Amanda. Not words. A photo. Our house. A black SUV parked at the curb. No caption. None needed. My phone rang 30 seconds later. Julia. You just kicked a hornet's nest, she said. Her voice wasn't scared. It was steady, like she'd known this was inevitable. They're moving faster than I expected. What do we do? I asked. She exhaled slowly. Now, Lucy. Now we stop pretending this was ever going to end quietly. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching the light creep in through the blinds. My name wasn't just a name anymore. It was a spark. And Malik had just realized someone had finally learned how to strike a match. The email Julia sent after I hit send wasn't full of panic or congratulations. It was just 4 words that felt like a gun being cocked. They're already moving, Lucy. And beneath that, keep your head down. But the thing about men like Malik is that they don't come screaming through the front door. They arrive quietly, like smoke slipping under the cracks, until by the time you smell the fire, the walls are already burning. Amanda called at 7:03 a.m. Her voice was thin, like she was trying to keep it steady and failing. They came to the house, she whispered. 2 of them, no plates on the car. They didn't say anything, just stood there. She didn't have to say the rest. She was terrified. I told her to grab her daughter, go to Julia's safe address, and not tell Mom. Mom would only panic. And panic was a luxury we didn't have anymore. By mid-morning, Julia and I were sitting in a diner that smelled like burnt toast and old coffee, the kind of place no one with power ever bothered to notice. She slid a burner phone across the table and a folded paper with an address. This is where Malik's secondary servers are, she said. Vin will try to wipe them clean before the files spread. We get there first, we own him. We wait, we lose everything. Vin. That was the name she said with a bitterness sharp enough to cut. Malik was loud, visible, a showman. Vin was the shadow behind him, and the shadow was already moving. Amanda didn't want to come, but I didn't give her a choice. If we run, he wins, I told her. She sat in the passenger seat, tapping her nails against the thermos like a heartbeat as we parked 2 blocks from the address. The building sat hunched in a dead strip of commercial space, the kind where streetlights flickered and never got fixed, like even the city had given up on it. The keypad was exactly where Julia said it would be. 4 digits. 1 click. A door opening into a silence that felt like it knew our names. Inside was nothing glamorous, just a laptop on an old desk, 4 folders labeled with the precision of a man who didn't make mistakes. Clients, finance, surveillance, burn box. I didn't need to be told which one mattered. Amanda's hands shook as she slid the USB into the port. Names scrolled across the screen, faster than my eyes could track. Judges, CEOs, donors, faces I'd seen on glossy billboards pretending to save the world. And then, buried in the list, us, Lucy Ware, Amanda Ware. Files filled with transactions, surveillance stills, transfers I never authorized. Malik didn't just have dirt. He had control. The copy bar crawled like a dying thing. 61%, 78%, 91%. That's when the sound hit. A key in the back door. Amanda froze, wide-eyed, and whispered, "Lucy." We ripped the drive out and bolted down the stairs as the door clicked open behind us. The winter air outside slapped hard, and for a second I thought I could feel his people right behind me. Back home, I opened the drive like it was a ticking clock. Hidden inside burn box was 1 text file. In case of death or arrest, send to media. Fear is currency. Julia's work, her failsafe. Malik's empire wasn't untouchable. It was just built on the assumption no one would ever fight back. Amanda stared at the screen like she was staring at her own grave. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," I said. "We make sure fear isn't just his anymore." 3 nights passed in a silence that didn't feel safe. My father still hadn't called. Mom sent messages I didn't answer. Malik's men didn't knock. They hovered. Cars outside that disappeared when I stepped out. A shadow near the fence. Amanda couldn't sleep. Jake stopped trying to talk me out of it. He knew the look in my eyes wasn't the one you argue with. Then, Friday morning, Amanda vanished. Her phone went dark. Her apartment door was splintered near the lock. Toys scattered on the floor like someone wanted to leave a message without saying it. The detective outside said, "No blood, just signs of a struggle." But there was something else. "Someone dropped off a laptop this morning," he added. "Labeled insurance. Your sister's name was in the files." By noon, the news broke. Not the full story, just a tremor. Malik's name in whispers, a hint of panic. Men who thought they were untouchable were suddenly blinking into the daylight. That night, a cardboard box sat on my porch. No address, just my name. Inside, Amanda's baby monitor, the red light blinking. A hiss, then a whisper through the speaker. "One more move and you're next." Jake wanted to call the police, but this wasn't something the police could hold. This was Malik saying he saw me now. Not the daughter, not the quiet girl, me. So I opened my laptop and set the clock. 72 hours. That's how long he had before the rest of the files detonated into the world. Julia called at 2 a.m. "You're starting a war," she said. "No," I whispered. "I'm ending one." I didn't sleep after setting the timer. There was no point pretending I could. Once a clock like that starts ticking, you stop hearing everything else. Even your own heartbeat starts counting down with it. Jake sat at the kitchen table watching me with the kind of quiet that isn't doubt anymore. It's acceptance. He'd seen me bend before, fold myself into whatever shape my family needed, whatever shape Malik's silence required. But tonight I wasn't bending. Tonight something sharper had replaced the soft edges. Julia chose the meeting spot the way she always did, somewhere ordinary enough to be invisible. An abandoned car wash on the east side, the kind of place where the wind whistles through the gaps like it's carrying secrets. She was already there when I arrived, leaning against the hood of a dented blue sedan, leather gloves on, hair tied back tight, eyes cutting through the dark. She didn't ask how I was. She just said, "Vin knows it was you." The name settled like a blade in my chest. Vin wasn't Malik. Vin was the thing behind Malik, the man who never appeared on camera, never left a fingerprint, never raised his voice because he didn't need to. When Vin moved, people disappeared. Not loudly, but cleanly, like they'd never existed at all. "He won't negotiate," Julia said. "He'll erase." She opened the trunk and handed me a burner phone, a folded address, and one last choice. "That's where the secondary servers are. If he wipes them, everything's gone. If we get there first, he loses leverage. If we don't, this ends with a body count." Her voice didn't shake. Neither did mine when I said, "Then we get there first." The warehouse sat on the edge of town, crouched between rusted shipping containers and the hum of a power line that never slept. I moved through the dark like it was something I'd worn before. Inside, the smell of old oil and cold metal clung to the air. The servers hummed softly in the corner, a heartbeat that didn't belong to me. I was halfway to the terminal when I heard footsteps. 2 sets, steady, trained, Vin's people. I ducked behind a steel pipe as their flashlights swept the floor. They moved like they'd done this 100 times before. Maybe they had. My pulse burned in my throat. When they passed, I slipped through the side door, fingers closing around the USB Julia had given me. The screen lit up with line after line of Malik's world. Offshore accounts, donations, bribes, faces, signatures. And then, my father's name. Not on the sidelines. In the ledger. I clicked. Transfers to trust funds under my name. Payoffs disguised as investments. Malik hadn't just used my family. My father had been in it from the start. The door slammed open behind me. Shouts sharp and low. I ripped the drive out and ran, their boots echoing through the warehouse like a second heartbeat chasing mine. A bullet split the air, hot metal kissing the wall just inches from my shoulder. They weren't warning me. They were hunting me. I threw myself out the back exit, landed hard, scrambled to the car. My hands shook only after the engine roared. Julia's burner buzzed once. They're moving faster than we thought. Vin's cleaning house. Be ready. When I got home, Jake was on the porch, pale, shaking. They were here, he whispered. 2 men. They didn't knock. They just stood at the fence. I pushed past him, dropped the USB on the table, and stared at it like it was both weapon and target. The truth wasn't just dangerous anymore. It was personal. The next morning, Malik's name was everywhere but nowhere. Journalists whispered, officials denied. But Vin's name didn't appear at all. That was how men like him stayed powerful, by never existing in public. Then the message came through Julia's burner. No number, no subject, just one line. You don't get to walk away from this, Lucy. 2 hours later, Julia called. They've got Amanda, she said. Vin's using her to reel you in. The air around me went still. I'd been angry before. This was different. This was cold. Then he made his mistake, I whispered. He still thinks I'm who I was. The meeting address landed 10 minutes later. One of those sterile corporate buildings downtown with glass that reflects but never reveals. Julia begged me not to go alone. I didn't listen. Some things you don't delegate. I wore black, no bag, no notes, just the burner and the drive. Amanda was tied to a chair when the elevator doors opened. Her hair was wild, eyes wide and furious. Vin stood behind her, tall, clean, terrifyingly calm. You should have left it alone, he said, voice like silk hiding a blade. Your father did. The sentence was a knife. My father wasn't just weak, he was complicit. Where is he? I asked. Vin tilted his head like a man enjoying a game. Safe, for now. Hand it over. I lifted the USB slowly. You already have it, I said. And in less than 2 days, so will everyone else. For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. A crack. What did you do? He asked quietly. I smiled, small, sharp. I stopped being your leverage. The silence in that room felt like it was alive, thick and deliberate, the kind of silence that wraps itself around your throat and waits to see if you'll break first. Vin didn't shout. He didn't move. He just stared at me like a man trying to decide whether I was still a piece on the board or the one flipping it over. Amanda's breathing was loud and ragged, wrists raw where the ropes bit her skin, but there was something different in her eyes this time. Not panic, not begging. Resolve. Vin had underestimated both of us, and I could see it dawning on him, slow and cold. He stepped forward with the elegance of someone who had always owned the floor beneath his feet. Lucy, he said softly, voice like smoke curling through the air. You think leaking a few files changes the world. It doesn't. These men have built entire empires on rot. You just brought a flashlight into a minefield. When it blows, you'll be standing right in the middle of it. His calm was a mask. I saw the edges fray. I kept my voice steady. Good. I'm done hiding in the dark. He circled me like a patient animal, lowering his voice even further. Your father knew better. He made his peace with this long ago. Everything you love, your house, your money, your quiet little life, it's all built with their hands. You are not the heroine here, Lucy. You're collateral dressed up as rebellion. The words cut deep, not because I believed them, but because once, a long time ago, I might have. But not now. Not after the silence, the SUV outside my house, the box on the porch, Amanda's name in his files. Then maybe, I said softly, it's time they paid it all back. He laughed, quiet and bitter. You've already lost. But it wasn't steel anymore. It was porcelain with hairline cracks spreading. Behind him, Amanda's chair scraped against the floor. Her voice shook, but it didn't break. Lucy, Don't give it to him. It was just a few words, small in the cavern of that sterile room, but it landed like a match in gasoline. Because for the first time, she wasn't asking me to save her. She was standing with me. I slid my hand into my pocket, feeling the burner phone Julia had armed with the timer. Less than an hour left. Vin didn't know where the files were. That terrified him more than any gun could. I raised my head and met his eyes. You've got 60 minutes. After that, every offshore account, every name, every dirty hand gets dragged into the light. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. Vin moved fast, faster than I thought he would. His hand closed around my throat like a vice, sharp and cold, and the room tilted. But I didn't shrink. I didn't plead. I dug my nails into his wrist, forced my breath through the choke, forced my voice out rough and low. Kill me, and the upload still goes through. His eyes searched mine for weakness. This time there was nothing to find. Then the hallway door burst open. Julia's voice sliced through the tension like a blade. Drop her, Vin. She stepped into the room with a gun leveled steady at his chest, hair tied back, eyes like a loaded chamber. Vin held me for one heartbeat longer, then released me slowly, not out of mercy, but calculation. Julia didn't lower the gun. Your cleanup failed, she said evenly. Half your accounts are frozen. Malik's gone. And the world's about to find out how small your empire really is. He tilted his head, calm but fraying. You'll go down too. Julia's mouth curved just slightly. Maybe, but you'll go first. She cut Amanda's ropes while I backed toward the elevator, the burner buzzing in my pocket. 48 minutes left. We didn't look back when the doors shut. We didn't need to. Vin wasn't the storm anymore. He was a man standing in one. Outside, the night air hit hard and clean, like the city had been holding its breath too. Amanda clung to my arm, shaking but steady, whispering, "What happens now?" I didn't have a polished answer. "Now we stop running," I said. Julia tossed me the keys to her car. "Go, lay low, I'll finish it." But I shook my head. No, I'm seeing this through. The city felt different as we drove downtown. Streets too quiet, air too sharp. Julia's plan was already moving. Journalists, investigators, watchdogs. There was no button to stop it now. Vin's power was seconds from bleeding out into daylight. When the clock hit 0, everything cracked at once. News banners lit up every screen. Malik's name. The shell companies. The politicians. Judges. My father. His voice on wire transfers. His signature in the margins. The entire rotten machine laid bare. Vin didn't run. He didn't have time to. The police hit his safe houses at dawn. He stood still when they cuffed him, jaw locked, eyes like a man watching his own kingdom burn. Malik was already gone, a ghost. My father wasn't innocent either. He had been part of it from the beginning, and the world finally saw. He called hours later, not furious, just tired. "You've ruined everything," he said softly, and for the first time in my life I didn't feel the need to apologize. "No," I whispered. "I fixed what you broke." Weeks blurred after that, Amanda testified. Julia vanished off grid like she always said she would. I didn't run. I rebuilt, slowly, quietly. The house didn't feel like a cage anymore. I took the heat lamps down, packed away the lights that once hung over an empty New Year's table. Amanda sat on the porch one evening, coffee in her hands, her daughter asleep inside. The air was soft. Not silent like before. Not weaponized. Just quiet. Hers. Mine. "You changed everything," she whispered. I shook my head. No, I just stopped letting them write the ending. Spring came slow. The world kept spinning, not around Malik, not around my father, not around fear, around me. The day Vin was sentenced, I walked to the river. The water was gold in the afternoon light. It sounded steady, endless. I whispered to no one. My name is Lucy. And this time, the silence is mine. Freedom didn't roar. It hummed. And for the first time in my life, I could hear it.